Hello, and welcome to another episode of Shou Talks. Today, I want to focus on the importance of self-awareness. And this came to heart because it's past my mind at this point. It's literally sitting in my heart due to the fact that I've come in contact with a lot of people, a lot of adults who still don't know who they are. And at this point in their life, it's almost as if they're forever lost. I remember taking a psychology class and we were learning about Erikson, who is a developmental psychologist who specialized in child psychoanalysis. I promise you guys I can speak, but it is early morning if you can't tell by my voice. But like I said, this has been on my heart, and the first thing I'm doing first thing Saturday morning is recording a podcast about self-awareness. So you got to give me some type of credit, y'all. The dedication is real. So, back to Erikson. He is actually best known for his theory of psychosocial development. And I'll quickly go through a summary of the stages and kind of tell you where this, my theory of people who are lost, where it comes from. So a summary of Erickson's stages is, so stage 1 is trust versus mistrust. And he believes that happens between birth and up to 12 to 18 months. And the outcome is that a sense of trust and security is established within that child. And that usually has to do with, between the caretaker and breastfeeding and skin to skin. So all of that the doctors encourage, when the child is born, skin to skin is very important because that builds some type of trust between you and your child. The second stage is anatomy versus shame and doubt. And that happens between the ages of 18 months to 3 years old. The desired outcome is the feeling of independence led to belief in yourself and your ability. So, the child is starting to become confident, when they're taking those first steps, or if they fall, they are confident that they're going to pick themselves up. Stage 3 is initiative versus guilt. That's between the ages of 3 to 5 years old. That's usually where self-confidence comes into play, the ability to take the initiative and make decisions. When you try to feed them and they're like, no, and they take the spoon from you and they want to do it themselves. That's usually that point. Stage 4 is industry versus inferiority. That is age 5 to 12. That is when the feeling of pride and accomplishment and pretty much self-worth is created. And just a little, what's the word I'm looking for? A spoiler alert. My theory starts in stage 4. Stage 5 is identity versus confusion. That's between the ages of 12 to 18. A strong sense of identity and a clear picture of your future is kind of where you start here. You're in high school. Some people are starting college and you're trying to figure out who you are, who your friends are, where do you fit in, what role do you play in your friendship, in your families, in your life. To me, this is where people are still stuck. This is where a lot of adults never actually progress from and get stuck in the identity versus confusion stage and just are forever just rotating their identity, rotating their personality, and depending on who they are around, this is who they think they are. Just to keep going, where stage 6 is intimacy versus isolation. That's usually between the ages of 18 to 40. That is when you learn how to build safe relationships filled with commitment and love and, fidelity, your ability to be loyal to, whether it's just your friends or your ability to, be loyal to your relationship. Then we have the 7th stage, which is generativity versus stagnation. That's between the ages of 40 to 65. And that is pretty much where you want to start to build your legacy. You have the desire to give your family and your community, to give back to your family, to give back to your community, and to be successful at work so that you can start building your legacy so that when you do pass, people can say, oh, I remember when so-and-so used to do this, or so-and-so was known for that. And then the final stage of Erickson's development psychoanalysis is integrity versus despair. And that everybody over the age of 65 falls into that category. And that desired outcome is pride in what you've achieved, which leads to feelings of satisfaction. That also kind of ties into, stage 7, where it's like you're starting to build your legacy. So stage 8 is kind of like your legacy has been set. The foundation is set. You've put everybody in place to continue on when you pass. So like I was saying, my theory is that a lot of people who are still struggling to find out who they are, the issue starts in stage 4. One thing about stage 4 is you develop your confidence. Erikson focuses a lot on the fact that it's how your behavior is in school. So like I said, in stage 4, which is, the early school ages and known as industry versus inferiority, they quote it as children grow in independence, they become increasingly aware of themselves as individuals. They begin to compare themselves. So with the industry category are children who are accomplished compared to their peers and can develop self-confidence and pride. They're praised for their achievements. Their self-esteem is boosted. They walk the halls and everybody knows who they are, whether, they're on a sports team or, they got the freshest clothes. They're praised no matter where they are. And then you have the inferiority category, where that's a reflection of children who do not achieve certain milestones and they may doubt their ability or self-worth. And these children are constantly criticized and may develop feelings of inferiority. So I think the industry versus inferiority, to me, that would be more so like 8 to 12. These are kids trying to figure out how to make friends. And bullying, oh my goodness, bullying nowadays is completely to another level. But I think so it starts in stage 4. People are figuring out how to make friends and who their friends are, and to them, they want to be just like their friends. You know what I mean? They never really have that moment where it's like, oh, I can take a little bit of this and a little bit of that from this person and that person and kind of create it to establish who I am. I myself am guilty of this. I more so would say I was stuck in stage 5, which is the adolescent stage and known for identity versus role confusion. I would say I was stuck in stage 5 probably until my late 20s, early 30s. Well, 30, because I know I've said it in other episodes where I'm like, I love who I am. I have finally figured out myself. I'm finally aware of who I am, what I want, where I'm going to go, and can't anybody tell me differently. You know what I mean? And so with stage 5, it's defined as the FAME term, identity crisis. During this stage, adolescents' main goal is to answer the question, who am I? And they try different personas. That is the actual definition of this stage. For the identity side of it the identity is to succeed in this stage. Adolescents need to establish a coherent sense of self. They will need to determine their priorities in life, your family, academia, just your hobbies. Then they need to set goals for their adult selves based on those values. Now, let's focus on what I just said. They set goals for their adult lives based on those values. Now, if you are an 18-year-old super popular kid, your value and goals might be different than if you were somebody who was criticized all through high school, made fun of, bullied, someone who pretty much had a silver spoon in their mouth. Their values might be a little more materialistic, depending on what their family life is. So I think another, thing that comes into play is, Erikson focuses on, school, mainly because that's where adolescents spend 80% of their life is at school or doing school activities or being around school friends. But your family also plays a role in your shaping your adult life, because it's either going to be one of two things. You are either going to see your parents and idolize them and want to be just like them or end up just like them, or you see your parents and you resent them, and your goal is to become nothing like them. You see what I mean? And that also builds your identity, because that also helps you set your goals based on those values. If you had a parent who was absent, and I'm not just saying physically absent, because there are situations that parents go through where they're just not meant to stay together, but that doesn't necessarily mean that you have an absent parents. They may not be in the house, but they're in your life. I grew up with my father not in my house. My parents were separated when I was 14 years old. Am I going to tell everybody I have an absent father? Absolutely not. My parents had their issues, and my father saw that the resolution was that he had to leave. And I don't blame him for that. Later on in life, when everything came out and, we would say, well, he never stopped speaking to me anyway. But later on, when I started finding out more of the reason why he couldn't stay, I respected that. But one thing I will say that I respect most about my father is that before he left, he always took my brother and I out to speak to us. Hey, this is what's going on. This is how I feel. I love you both. You know what I mean? Like he made sure that we did not feel that it was our fault. Now, other people may take things differently, but that all plays into just how your mindset is. It rolls back to, once again, the people's priorities in life. Whether you are a materialistic person, or sometimes people force themselves to be blind or block certain memories to avoid the truth or to avoid hurt. You can't blame them for that. That's their outlook on life. I can only speak on my own experience and my own judgment and my values. And I feel like seeing my father stand up for himself helps set the value that I now walk in. I do not let anybody peer pressure me into anything. That's because I am now very much aware of who I am. You can, present me with an offer and I can tell you yes or no. If I tell you no, you can try to convince me all you want, but if my mind is made up with a no, you're not changing that to a yes. Not everybody's like that. I've seen so many people who are struggling to be okay with who they are. And I just want to shake them and be like, yo, if you took 24 hours to reflect on what you've been through, what role you played in going through that, and what steps you would take to avoid, no, you know what? You should, because I don't think you should avoid anything. What steps you would take to enhance that experience so that if you felt it was a negative experience, to make it a positive one. If you took 24 hours to just reflect on that, I promise you would come out with a plan. You'd come out with goals based on a different set of values. You wouldn't focus on having the best car or the newest, system that's out. Sorry, I kind of drifted off of stage 5. So like I said, identity is, where people are determining, they determine their priorities in life, and they are able to set goals for their adult lives. Role confusion is what started this whole thought for me, because it's where a lot of people that I've seen are stuck, and they define it as, they struggle to break away from the person their parents or peers expect them to be. And without the consistency of identity, now remember, identity is where you determine your priorities in life. So without the consistency of identity, they grow up confused about what they truly want for their future. So you see how Erikson puts, identity within role confusion. If you do not have a strong identity, you cannot know who you are. Well, clearly, because identity is, who you are. But if you don't have a consistent identity, if you don't know how to break away from everybody's expectation, and I don't mean the fake expectations, because there are so many people, and y'all know them because they're all over social media, posting all these posts that you're just like, dude, I know you in real life. This is not who you are. Stop it. Stop it. I can't tell y'all how many times I scroll through social media and I roll my eyes and I'm like, this is not who you are. Like, cut it out. But to them, it is who they are. You know what I mean? I've had friends, and like I said, I'm very much guilty of it too. I was, and it's funny because it was my cousin who brought it to my attention, and I want to say I was like early 20s, and he called me out for it. And I think ever since he called me out for it, it made me so much more aware that I was actually doing it. He called me out and was like, yo, who's your best friend now? Because whoever your best friend is, that's who you're acting like. And I'm like, oh, ouch. But it was the truth. I know what it's like to be in that role confusion stage. You know, it's whoever you're hanging out with, that's who you become. And I don't think that it's necessarily bad to pick up traits from friends. I think that is why you have friends. Your friends are supposed to reflect your personality. You can pick up certain things from different people, but becoming an entire person is where you have a problem, because it gets hard to keep that, you know, to maintain a personality that's not yours. It gets hard. It gets frustrating, especially if that person starts to change and you're just like, oh man, what am I supposed to do now? Or if you guys have a fallout, you're not friends anymore. Where are you getting your feed from? Like, who are you now? And I want to say that to me, that was one of the biggest things I struggled with, was figuring out who I was. And I want to say that hit me probably when I was ending my introduction to 30 and becoming 31. I think 30 kind of opened up my eyes to certain air quote friends that I thought were my everything, and allowed me to break away and be myself. I don't have I think every family is dysfunctional. I think that's what, you know, that's the beauty of family. I think that's the beauty of, well, not friendship. You should not have dysfunctional friendships, but dysfunctional families kind of help you weed out the dysfunction in certain people. You know, your eyes should be open for that. Now, I have spit a whole lot at you. You know, I spoke about stage 4, the early stages, industry versus inferiority, adolescence, identity versus role confusion. And to be honest, my solution to people who are stuck in the identity versus role confusion is to take a breather. Take 24 hours to reflect on your life. And in that reflection, I need you to cover the experiences you've been through, the disappointments you faced, what you feel were accomplishments, where you thought you would be compared to where you are, and read through those and create a new set of goals. Like, I find it shocking how many people I come in contact with who still don't know who they are. And I'm not talking about like 20-year-olds. I'm talking about people in their 30s, people in their 40s. Hell, some of them are in their 50s. And I'm just like, you still trying to figure that out? You're still letting other people command your mind? You still out here standing in line to go buy the new Jordans that dropped, bro? Like, you're 45. You know what? I know so many people gonna come at me for the Jordans comment. I'm sorry. I'm not in disclaimer. I'm not a sneakerhead, so I don't be knowing, but you get the drift. You know what I mean? You get what I'm saying. It's just, it's sad. It's sad when you see parents at that. Like, these aren't even just adults with no responsibility. These are adults who are parents and they don't know who they are. And I think that is where the toxic cycle starts, because what you fail to realize is that your kids are watching you walk this path of confusion. That is the foundation that they are going to use when they hit that stage of identity versus role confusion. You know what I mean? We're not at the point anymore where we can just be like, do as I say, not as I do. No. If you are an adult, you know that doesn't work. You know our parents used to say, oh, children should be seen, not heard. These kids ain't living by that right now. These 12-year-olds out here thinking they got as much right as an 18-year-old. These 18-year-olds out here thinking they got as much right as a 30-year-old. You know what I mean? Like that's not falling no more. Know who you are before you start trying to create other lives. It's just going to continue with the confusion. Then you got all these people who are out here not knowing who they are. Your parents didn't know who they were. So now you don't know who you are. Then you're going to go have kids and, raise them to not know who they are. Now, if your kid turns out doing some reckless stuff, who you going to blame? Oh, I don't know how they turned out like that. I did everything I could. No, you didn't. How much time did you spend with your child? How much value did you put in their life? What value did you put in their life? What did you tell them made sense? What did you tell them mattered? Did you tell them that they had to make sure that they always look good, always smell good, always smile? Or did you tell them to always do right? Did you tell them to make sure that whatever you believe in, you stand for? No, you told them to focus on material stuff. So guess what? When your child grows up and you need help and they're looking at you side eye like that's not my problem, that's what you taught them to focus on. There's so many things that we as a society do, we as a nation do, that we don't realize there's somebody watching us. Amanda Seales said it best the other day, and that it hit me to another level. And it's like, we are somebody's ancestors. Don't you want to make a difference? Don't you want to set a good example? Don't you want to be the one to be like, yo, hear someone say, oh my gosh, my grandma, my granddad, they didn't let nobody mess with them. They stood for what they believed in. Instead of, oh yeah, my grandma was 50 years old trying to go to the club with me. What? Figure out who you are. We see so many quotes nowadays that say, nobody can be you. And that's your superpower. There are some people, I'm gonna say this and I gotta go. There are some people, when I see them, I know exactly who they think they are. And it's like, they will find a role model, whether it's a celebrity, and learn that person's personality to the core. That was me with Tamar. Like I said, my cousin, he calls me out and I love and appreciate him for it, because instead of me looking at it as criticism, he's critiquing, and it helps me realize what I'm doing and how I can adjust to either make it better or erase it or pluck it out because it's a weed. That was me with Tamar Braxton. Oh my Lord, for the life of me, I thought I was Tamar Braxton from how I spoke. I had her little down. Okay. How I dressed, my attitude, like you couldn't tell me anything. Tamar Braxton was any and everything. She was my queen to be. Like, I wanted to be her. And now I look at Tamar and I'm just like, oh, she's annoying. No shade. Oh, I mean, that was a little shade. I feel like every time someone says no shade, it's because they just threw a really big shady statement out there. But the Tamar that I had fallen in love with was because she was portrayed as someone who was misunderstood. You know what I mean? She's the baby sister of 5, and nobody ever took her seriously. And that is what connected me to Tamar. That's what drew me to her. I felt like her voice could never be heard because it was superseded by her 4 other older sisters. And she fought to be heard. And that's what I admired. Then Tamar started doing the most. Now, in her defense, she was going through a lot, going through a divorce, and then, having a new relationship, and just the limelight can do a lot to a person. I don't know that, but it's what you hear. So I drew away from wanting to be Tamar, and I figured out who Shou was, and I stuck to that. I stuck to Shou. I stuck to figuring out what my priorities were, what my goals are, what is of value to me. And now I sit back and I enjoy my life. There's a lot of people who, let me take that back. There are not a lot of people. There are some people who are not doing well with me understanding who I am and me being self-aware of Shou. And you come in contact with those people. The minute you figure out who you are, someone, at least one person, gets upset, because that now means they've lost control. The minute you grow your confidence, self-awareness, self-love, the minute those items come into play, you have at least one person that will try to destroy that, because you are no longer who they want you to be. And that becomes a problem. Whether they will continue to bash you, whether they will tell you you've changed. Some people might tell you you're dark, you're mean, you're rude, you're angry. And it's not that you're angry or any of the above. It's that you no longer are their person. You're your own person. And not everybody can handle people being able to stand on their own 2 feet. because to them, you now think you're better than them. And that's never happened. You don't even have to say anything. It's not necessarily that you feel like you're better than them. It's that you are becoming your own. And that's not for everybody to understand. So on that note, I left you with some gems today. I hope you appreciated it. I had to get that off my chest. And I feel like when I have some guests, we might dive back into this conversation because it is a topic that is ever going. You know, you always come into contact with adult children and it's never any hate. I feel like once you become aware of yourself, you no longer get upset with people who are still trying to figure out who they are. I mean, there's disappointment because it's just life. You have expectations of who you think people should be at this point. And when you're meeting people who are probably your age or older and they're still playing around, it's like, so you don't want to grow up. You don't want to feel like you finally know who you are. Okay. You come to realize that ain't your job. Your job is not to create people. God did that. God created humans and parents raised them. You can't even, that ain't your job. That ain't your place. But on a note, thank you for rocking out with me today, on this episode of Shou Talks, as we dove into the importance of self-awareness, y'all. It's the important stage 5, adolescence, is identity versus role confusion. All right. I'm gonna leave you with this last line. Without a consistent identity, adolescents will grow confused about what they truly want for their future. Identity, self-awareness. If you are someone who doesn't, who hasn't hit that self-awareness stage, dig into your life. All that time and money you spending on other people, spend it on yourself. Figure out who you are, what you want, and focus on that. Your biggest investment in life should be yourself. You out here spending half your day working for somebody else, and then you come home and you don't want to put no effort into yourself. Why? Your job can fire you. You're an at-will employee. They could drop you at the drop of a dime. Then what? What do you have to fall back on? Invest in yourself. It's Shou. Thank you for rocking out with Shou Talks. And remember, it's my life, my story. Can't nobody tell it like I do. Peace.